Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all of you out there in video land. My name is Arya Zarenkelk, and on behalf of City College of San Francisco and the Strong Workforce Program, we are proud to present another edition of Workforce Wednesdays. And this time we're going to be talking about interviewing. So welcome to Interviewing Essentials. As mentioned before, my name is Arya Zarenkelk, and I am a Employment Training Specialist 3 with the honor and privilege of serving arts, media, entertainment. So that includes visual media design, broadcast electronic media arts, fashion, photography, and cinema students. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about interviewing. And before we do that, I want to learn a little bit more about our audience member. So Lena, if you could please just share with me and those on the recording, your name, your job goal, what you're hoping to get out of this interviewing conversation, and your astrological sign. So that is your name, your job goal, what you're hoping to get out of this conversation, and your astrological sign. And that would be really great.
Sure. My name is Lina Gutkina. I'm a fashion design student at CCSF, and I would like to interview for a position of fashion designer with a company or assistant fashion designer. My sign is Aries, and the goal is to learn whatever it is to learn about the interviews today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lena. Jeff and Mock, welcome to Interviewing Essentials. We just got started. If you could please share with the studio audience your name, your job goal,
Sure.
what you're hoping to get out of this workshop, and then your astrological sign.
Astrological sign. All right. First of all, I love your look. I haven't seen you for so long, Arya, and I love this different style. But my name is Jeff and Mock. I am a graphic designer right now. I work for a tech company, and I'm here because it's always good to just refresh your skills, your interviewing skills. And I've taken this course before, and I just wanted to, you know, uh, just work on interviewing skills. You can always improve. And what else do I need to say? Did I miss anything else?
Yes, your astrological sign.
I'm a Virgo.
Nice. I love that. Thank you, Jeffin.
Thank you.
Jeffin, one thing to note, I don't know if the platform informed you, we are recording this. So if you would like to turn your camera off, you're more than welcome to. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. All right, y'all. Let's talk about interviewing. So as always, the beauty part of coming to a Workforce Wednesday is that you're going to get everything from our conversation in an email follow-up from me, which will include this infographic, as well as all the content we'll be discussing in an email. So if you have any questions, I invite you to please ask them at any point in time. Okay, you can either raise your hand virtually or throw it in the chat, or you can just ping me somehow, get my attention, either unmute yourself. And then Jeffin, since you just joined in a little bit later, I have also put the infographic in the chat if it's easier for you to download it and open it up on your own screen.
Great. Thank you.
Very welcome. I'd like to begin by stating very clearly that hiring is arbitrary and it is discriminatory. Hiring is arbitrary and it is discriminatory. So that means you may be the very best at what you do, but you still need to out-interview everybody else, right? So you may be the very best at what you do, but you still need to out-interview everybody else. And so how does one do this, right? We do this by preparing. And the reason why preparation is really important is because when you are interviewing, even though you may be the best at what you do and you need to out-interview everyone else, your intention and manifestation is to honor the cardinal rule of American football, which is to always move forward down the field towards the touchdown and never sideways. So let me show you what this looks like for those of you who are a little confused. So let's imagine this football field as an interview, right? And, you know, whenever we're talking with people, it's usually about an hour. The first 5 to 10 minutes is small talk. The last 5 to 10 minutes is you asking questions. So in essence, you get about 40 minutes, sometimes even less, to go from here, where you receive the ball, to here, which is the end zone, right? And so if you are unprepared, it may sound, feel, and look like this. Arya, thank you so much for coming and interviewing with us today. Why don't we start by having you tell us about yourself? Yes, absolutely. Hi, my name is Arya Zarenkalk. I'm 39 years old. I'm from Orange County. What is it that you want to know? Right? You're already starting at a deficit. Versus if you come prepared, it might sound, look, and feel like this. Arya, thank you so much for coming and interviewing with us. Why don't we start by having you tell us about yourself? Yes, absolutely. Hi, my name is Arya Zarenkalk, and I'm an arts-focused career professional. I use tools such as mindfulness, active listening, and data analysis to do my work. I got started on this path when in 2008, after I graduated during the first recession, it took me over a year to find a job that required me to move all the way across the country and take a very low-paying nonprofit job to begin my career. It is this empathy that drives a lot of my work. Currently, I'm working at City College of San Francisco as an employment training specialist 3. I'm working on my technical skills and doing research to learn more. And that's why I'm super excited to be here today, because this would be the next step for me, right? So preparation allows us to be effective in these conversations. Preparation allows us to be effective in these conversations. So how does one prepare? Well, these are my invitations for you to consider. The first step is to print out the job description and then do a keyword analysis. You're going to do this keyword analysis by getting 2 different colored highlighters. With one colored highlighter, I invite you to please highlight all the technical terms you see. So think software, hardware, any of those types of skills. With the second highlighter, I invite you to highlight all the interpersonal skills that you see. So think on time, proactive, sense of humor, critical thinking, ask good questions, things like that. Then I would invite you to please, with a pen and paper, write down all of the words that you've highlighted and seek out which words are repeated. For the words that are repeated are the keywords that you want to start inserting into your conversation with people during an interview. The next step is to turn each bullet point in the job description into a question, and then you're going to answer that question with a story. To turn each bullet point into a question is quite simple. You are literally going to write the words, tell me about a time when you have, and then insert the bullet point. So if the bullet point reads, design, develop, and implement marketing collateral for web and print, the question you're going to write on a piece of paper is, tell me about a time when you have designed, developed, and implemented marketing collateral for web and print. Do this for all of the bullet points in the job description. So think the responsibilities and the nice things to have. And I invite you to literally please write it down on a piece of paper. And then below each bullet point question, you're going to write the letter C, the letter A, and the letter R. This acronym, CAR, stands for Context, Action, Result. Context, Action, Result. So if you ever forget how to answer these questions in interviews, or if you ever forget how to just communicate an idea via email or a presentation or in a conversation, this is a really wonderful framework that I find really serves So just remember to get in your car and go. So let's talk a little bit about these elements of a good story. The context, this is one of the most important parts, if not the most important part of your story. It is the buildup of the story. It has specifics. It is very detailed. It is very informal. It's going to have the who, the what, the where, the when, the why. It better have a lot of proper nouns. So think names. Think the names of people, the names of companies. Think about the specific concepts behind projects that you're working on, either at school or at work, right? The more details you provide, the more interesting the story becomes. Then the action, which will be a little shorter than the context section, is what did you do? Not what did your team do? Not what did your department do? Not what did the organization do? Not what the company did? Not what the market did? What did you as an individual do? And then lastly, the results, which should be the shortest part of your story, are going to be the results of what did you do as an individual. So if we were to visualize your story, it's going to be a triangle with a point facing downward. So context has the most information, then action a little less, and results the least. One way to think about context is imagine that, or think back to when you were in middle school, high school, college, grad school, or even maybe today, you have a crush on somebody. And something interesting happens between you and this crush, and it confuses you very dearly. So what do? You got to go to the homie, the best homie, to get advice on what to do. And the tricky part is that the homie doesn't even know that you have a crush to begin with. So the first step then is to tell the homie, the best homie, about every single thing that has happened from the moment you met this crush to this confusing thing that you need advice on. This, Workforce Wednesday participants, is context. I just want to inquire if that experience that I just described either sounds familiar or at the very least makes sense. Just give me a virtual thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, great. Another way to think about the stories that you're telling is as if you are telling a joke, right? The best comedians spend the majority of their time in a joke in context, which is the build up to the joke, right? So Margaret Cho, Sarah Silverman, Billy Crystal, Jerry Seinfeld, the very contentious Dave Chappelle at this point, they all do this really well. If they're telling a 10-minute joke, 8 minutes of the joke is this random story with names and places and things and details that really make us wonder, where is this story going, right? And then there is a 30-second punchline, and then we're all left laughing for the next 30 to 45 seconds, right? So the context is the build-up to the joke, the action is the punchline, and us laughing is the results. So these are the ways that I invite you to think about how to write out your stories. Okay? It's really important that you handwrite these stories on a piece of paper. And the reason for this is when we handwrite things versus typing them, we start learning these stories or start integrating this information into our experiences much faster. And I know this seems like a lot to do. And I promise after you do this for 2 or 3 jobs, you're going to have mastery over a variety of different stories. And you won't need to necessarily do this for every single job. Okay? Because you're probably going to be applying to the same types of jobs over and over and over. Right? So this is how I invite you to create the content for your context, action, results, stories. Does anybody have any questions about this strategy to begin with? Okay, wonderful. So once you have your content written, the next step is to practice your stories. Practice your stories. And it's really important that you practice these stories out loud. And it's even more important that you practice these stories in front of a mirror, on video, in front of another human being. And especially if that human being is 7 or 8 years old, that would be the best. And the major things that you're looking for when you're practicing these stories is how is the content and how is the body language. So with content, what we're looking for specifically is, one, am I answering the question? Am I answering the question? A lot of times in interviews, people get asked questions and they don't answer it. And that's really confusing and frustrating to people doing the interview. So I invite you to focus on answering the question. The second element of content is, am I being specific and detailed? Am I telling the story in a way that keeps the listener enthralled and engaged? And this is why if you tell a story to a 7 or 8-year-old and then they can repeat it back to you, then you know you've told a really good story. So when you're watching the game tape, or you're watching yourself in the mirror, or you're asking a friend or a 7, 8-year-old to give you feedback on your stories, these are the two elements of content that I invite you to be paying attention to. Am I answering the question? And is the story detailed enough? The second element of telling good story is body language. And the secret to body language, in my opinion, all begins with the breath, right? So to start, I always invite clients to, at the very least, have really great posture so that you can take deep and engaging breaths. So to find good posture, it's always feet flat on the floor, sitting at the edge of your seat, knees aligned with ankles, knees aligned with hips, hips aligned with shoulders, shoulders relaxed. So not too schlumpy and not too like proud eagle, just relaxed. And then you want to make sure your neck is relaxed, right? And then through this way, the tall spine will allow for the breath to flow easily and evenly through the body. And when you do this, you immediately will relax. The blood will flow easier, and your brain will be able to do what it needs to do in order to answer these questions. The next element, I believe, for good body language is smiling, because when we smile, we're relaxed. And it is my intention manifestation that you are applying for jobs in spaces that you love and are enthusiastic about. So you should be excited to be talking to people about this stuff, no matter what it is. Then staying with the mouth area, you want to make sure you are enunciating your words if you've been told that you bumble. You want to make sure that you're speaking at an appropriate volume level, so not too loud and not too quiet. You want to make sure that you're speaking at an appropriate pace. So you're not speaking too quickly, you're not speaking too slowly. The intention is to speak as if you're listening to a 90s R&B song that just kind of like makes you keep nodding your head and keeps you in time and in rhythm. The last element of speech to be mindful of is your tone. Sometimes we speak with upspeak, which is everything sounds like a question. Or sometimes we may speak in a too deep, somber, like really sad tone. So just be mindful that you can, of your tone in general, and most importantly, that you can use tone to emphasize different elements of your story. So if you're answering the question, tell me about a weakness or tell me about a failure, you can use tone to communicate humility and understanding. And I'll show you how to do that when we get to those questions in the interview process. Then, of course, one of the most important parts of body language is eye contact, especially if you're doing a video Zoom call interview. I invite you to just be looking at the little black dot on your camera, right? As long as you keep your eyes there, that will make the viewer feel like you are making eye contact with them. And that will help establish a rapport between you and the listener. If you want to also figure out how do I look directly at the camera while also keeping an eye on people's faces, if they have their video on, you can always move your Zoom platform that shows everyone's faces immediately underneath your camera. So the distance between your camera and the faces is very minuscule. So you can look back and forth between camera, faces, camera, faces, camera, faces. So I was just doing that, and I would hope that it demonstrated that the subtle difference is negligible when you're looking between camera and face. So body language is super duper important. The last reason why I invite you to practice these stories out loud is to increase the speed of integration. The mind does not work in words. The mind works in vibrations. So as I'm speaking these words, I'm sending a vibration from my brain to my larynx, then to my vocal cords. These are vibrations. And then the vocal cords create a vibration via my tongue. And then those vibrations go out into the world and go into my ears. And then my ears then transfer that vibration back into my brain. By doing this, we learn the stories much quicker and much more effectively versus those who practice the stories quietly in their head. So please write the stories down and please practice them out loud in order to learn them faster. Does anybody have any questions on how to prepare and practice your stories? Okay, wonderful. So we've printed out the job description. We've done the keyword analysis by highlighting the words with highlighters and seeing which words show up the most. We have written each bullet point into a tell me about a time when you have insert bullet point question. We have written out the letter CAR and handwritten the context, the action, and the results of the story that you're telling to address the tell me about a time when you have bullet point question. We have practiced these stories out loud in front of a mirror, in front of a video camera, in front of a entity of either adult age or 7 to 8 years old, paying close attention to content. Specifically, did I answer the question and am I giving details, as well as the body language. After doing all these things, the next step would be to reach out to whoever you've been communicating with and inquire with them about who you will be interviewing with. So you could send an email and it could very easily read, Dear Mary, I'm super excited to come in and interview for blank position at blank company next week. If possible, I would love to know who am I interviewing with and what is it that they do. And maybe Mary will say, unfortunately, I can't give that information to you, which is okay, because you'll have practiced enough that you'll be able to read the room when you enter. If Mary does say yes, then it is my invitation to you to utilize the most increased and interesting muscle of the last 20 years since the invention of the internet and social media. You know it, I know it, you love it, we hate it. It's called the creep. And for those of you out there in the studio audience who don't know what I'm referring to when I say the creep, I literally just mean type in the first and last name of whoever you will be interviewing with into your Googler and look to see what information shows up. And so with the various data sources that are provided to you, so I'm referring to company website, I'm referring to LinkedIn profiles, Twitters, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Dub Smash, if that's your thing. Any kind of personal blogs or journals that they might have, a YouTube channel. You're going to start looking at all these various data sources, and it is your intention and manifestation to do research on the person interviewing you to build a persona or a general idea of who you are interviewing with. Your intention is with this persona to identify or build a general sense of what kind of personality type they are. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about 4 major personality types and how to identify them. Please note that there are combinations of these. Please know there are many more than just 4. These are just some ideas to get you thinking about how to review the data. So first, there are drivers. Drivers are people that get things done. These are the people who know exactly what it takes to get a job done, step by step by step by step by step. These are people who really value procedure and methodology and very linear thinking. Cannot go to C until you have completed B, right? These people are usually very results driven. And so when you look on their LinkedIn profile, you're going to see them talk a great deal about the results that they have achieved in a very cold manner, sometimes just copying and pasting the content from their resume. Next, we have expressives. To an expressive, ideas are the most important thing. This is big picture people. So these are people who are unclear of the details necessary to implement an idea. They are just coming up with ideas. Usually this is a lot of executive level staff. So if you are interviewing with a COO, a CEO, a CMO, a CFO, right? These people are going to value ideas. Unless you see in your research that they used to be doing jobs at the same company and have been moving up through the ranks, then consider that they are a driver and an expressive simultaneously. So if you are meeting with an expressive, you are going to emphasize ideas in your stories. If you are meeting with a driver, you're going to emphasize step-by-step methodology or procedures that you use in your stories. Then we have analysts. Analysts are people who just love data. They love doing research before they make any kind of decision. And traditionally, their favorite question is, what data do you have to prove that claim? These people will have a lot of numbers in their work, a lot of numbers in their LinkedIn profiles. And these are the people who are going to want to hear about how you did a pre-survey, a mid-survey, a post-survey, and then did some data analysis and all this to then inform how you proceeded. So if you sense you're meeting with an analyst, I invite you to make sure you lean into data when you're practicing these stories. Lastly, we have amiables. And amiables really value team energy above all else. These are people who want to make sure everyone's feeling good and everyone's feeling positive when we're doing the work. These people have emojis and exclamation points all over a lot of their language online. So if you sense that you're meeting with an amiable, the way you're going to tell your stories are going to be through the lens of ensuring everyone's feeling good on the team that you're working on. And all of the efforts and energy that you put in were about ensuring that the vibe between everyone was solid. So the overall intention with all of this research that you're doing is to try to understand the audience that you're meeting with and thus telling your stories through this lens. Does anybody have any questions about how to do research on your potential audience and then how you might change your stories based on what you've learned? Okay, wonderful. So now the preparation continues. It is the night before the interview, and I invite you to choose your outfit. If you're doing a Zoom video meeting, your outfit is really going to be making sure that from the waist up, you are looking professional, and from the waist down, you are relaxed. When we're picking our outfits, it's really important to determine, am I meeting with a more conservative, traditional space, or am I meeting with a more contemporary organization that might be a little bit more liberal in their dress? So an example is if I knew I was interviewing with Wells Fargo, I will always wear a tie and I will always wear a business jacket. If I'm meeting with Slack, for example, I probably would just wear a collared shirt. Maybe it has some fun colors in it, something a little bit more relaxed, right? So this is how I invite you to be thinking about how to dress for an interview. At the end of the day, your clothing should make you feel like your swag is on 1,000 and that you're also very comfortable. Those are kind of the two criterions, okay? And then if you're meeting in person, I would say try to dress one level above the people you're meeting with. So if you're meeting with a more contemporary organization and you know everyone wears jeans and t-shirts to work, show up with business casual. If you know you are meeting with a more conservative, traditional institution in space, you come with a full-blown dress suit, right? This is how we determine our outfits. Please pick your outfits the night before. Make sure that they're ironed and clean, free of stains, and just ready to go. I invite you to go to bed early that night. So that means no screens 2 hours before bed. So that means small screens like your phone, medium-sized screens like your computers or monitors, and large screens such as TV, right? Your intention is to get deep, fruitful rest. And the light from the screens kind of creates mischief from our abilities to get that deep, fruitful rest. So you're going to go to sleep, and then you're going to wake up with enough time to just feel good. That is your entire intention the day of the interview, is to feel good. No practice, no prep. You're just trying to feel good. I also invite clients that the day of interviews is to wake up with enough time to engage in an activity that makes them feel expansive. And when I say expansive, I mean grounded and energized. So this is usually something a little physical that makes us feel really good, really calm, really focused. So for some people, it's a stretch. Other people, it's a hike. Some people, it's playing with an animal. Some people, it's a swim. Some people, it's a yoga class. Some people, it's a run. Every person has something different. So I invite you to consider and reflect upon thoughtfully, what is your expansive activity? Engage this activity and then do the post-activity ritual. So take a shower, stretch, eat some delicious food, drink some water. And then your intention is to prepare for the interview. If you're doing a video or phone interview, it's probably with a recruiter. And so my invitation to you is going to be the same as if it were with an in-person interview. The questions will just be a little different. I invite you to put on the clothes you're going to wear for the interview. Sit in the space where you're going to do the Zoom interview or the phone call. Set a timer for 18 minutes and do this within 20 minutes of the interview. And for 18 minutes, I invite you to close your eyes and breathe deeply. Deep inhales, deeper exhales. And as you do this deep inhales and deeper exhales, I invite you to do one of two things. The first is either positively visualize yourself succeeding and crushing this interview. So people are laughing at your jokes, you're answering all the questions, you're asking really great questions. The energy between you and the people you're interviewing with is really positive and light and charming. If visualization is a little mischievous or challenging for you, an alternative would be to, with your eyes closed, just repeat a mantra over and over again to yourself, matching it with your breath. So breathing in, you might say something like, I'm charming, and then the name of the company into hiring me. I'm charming, the name of the company to hiring me. I'm charming, the name of the company to hiring me. So inhale, you'll say it once, and then exhale, maybe you'll say it 3 or 4 times. And you're going to repeat this cycle for 18 minutes. When we do this, a couple of things are happening. Number one, we are quieting down the limbic system, the reptile brain, the fight or flight part of our brain. And we are activating the neocortex, the Homo sapien, the stay and play part of our brain. So we will be relaxed and focused. That's on a physiological level. On a quantum physics level, what we're going to be doing is raising our human vibration, our human resonance to the level of manifestation. So when we raise our human vibration to a certain frequency, it emanates out towards the universe, and the universe receives it and sends that exact frequency back to us, providing us with that experience. So if you do nothing to prepare for an interview, if you take the time to do an interview, to do a visualization experience, either through visualization or through the repetition of mantra, you will be in good shape. So does anybody have any questions about the meditation preparation activity that I just described? Okay, wonderful. So then when the 18-minute timer goes off, you'll have 2 minutes left before the call. So if you're in a Zoom meeting, go into the Zoom meeting and just wait and keep breathing. If you are waiting for a phone call, I invite you to email the person you've been emailing with. It's usually the recruiter. And then in the subject line, just write "ready when you are" and type out your phone number. That way, the recruiter will already feel like you're making their life easier, because then they won't have to quickly search through their content management system, type in your name, pull up your resume, download your resume, open up the resume to then see the phone number. You've just given it to them, and they're already going to feel like you're making it easy for them. With the recruiter interview, there are traditionally 3 questions that they ask, because their intention is to identify whether or not you are a crazy person and whether they can afford you. So these 3 questions are usually what shows up in a recruiter conversation. The first question is, tell me about yourself. And the way you're going to answer this question is very simple. You're going to say your name. You're going to say what you are, which is usually the job goal that you're applying for in that moment. And then 3 tools that you use to do this work. Hi, my name is Aria. I'm an employment training specialist 3, or I'm an arts-focused career person. And I use mindfulness, active listening, and data analysis to do this work. So that's the first part. It's the business section. Then the subsequent part will be what's called the party section. And you're going to talk a little bit about your past, how you got started on this path, a little bit about your present, what are you currently doing, and a little bit about your future, which is how it's related to this conversation. And it's going to end with gratitude. So it might sound something like this. I got started on this path when graduating in 2007 from grad school. It took me over a year to find a job, and I had to move all the way across the country to take a low-paying nonprofit job. So this empathy is what drives a lot of the work that I do. Currently, I'm working at City College of San Francisco as an employment training specialist 3 and doing research to learn more. And this is why I'm excited to be here, because this would be the next step. Thank you. So if you practice with this template, that I call the mullet because it is business in front, party in back, you should have a pretty strong and memorable answer to the question, tell me about yourself. If you want to know, if you didn't catch all that, this will be recorded. I'm also putting in the chat the infographic for how to answer the question, tell me about yourself, for you to download and enjoy. And also, if you go to the City College Career Education YouTube page, there is a recording of a workshop that I've done on how to answer the question, tell me about yourself. So there's more information for you there. The second question a recruiter is going to ask is, why do you want to work at blank company? And so if you are applying for a job at a company, it is my hope and intention and manifestation for you that you have some kind of personal connection to the product or service provided. Because in a cover letter and in these interviews, they're going to know, why do you love this company? So if you can tell them about your personal connection to the product or service provided, then it's going to make you stand apart from those others who are interviewing with you, right? So if I was interviewing for a job at City College, I might talk about how I'm in a band and the person who recorded one of our albums received a sound certificate at City College. And I was so impressed with the high quality versions of our songs that came out that I knew that the level of teaching at City College is beyond compare. And that's why I want to work at a place like City College, right? I give a personal connection to the product or service provided. The last question that a recruiter is probably going to ask you is, what are your salary expectations for this role? What are your salary expectations for this role? Please know you're going to get all this language in a follow-up email from me. I'm still going to go over it though right now. Just don't worry if you don't get everything, okay? The first words to respond to this question is, I don't know enough about the role. Can you please tell me about the total compensation package? I don't know enough about this role. Can you please tell me about the total compensation package? The total compensation package, in essence, is the dollar equivalent of your salary combined with all the other benefits that you'll be receiving. So healthcare, vision, dental. Are there any travel benefits? Do you get any paid time off? Do you get any sick leave? Right? What is the dollar equivalent of all the benefits that you're receiving? So you're gonna get a large number. And just to give you some context, I might make, $80,000 a year, just salary-wise. And with benefits, I might actually make something like $130,000 a year. Asking for the total compensation package helps you understand exactly what you'll be receiving in forms of compensation. If the recruiter continues to ask, what are your salary expectations? And I want to say, when they give you the first number, your response to that will be, yeah, I can work with that. Really relaxed, really calm, no big deal, right? If they continue to push and ask, well, what are your salary expectations? Your next question is going to be, what has been the traditional salary range for this role? What has been the traditional salary range for this role? And again, they're going to give you another number. And whatever they tell you, you have to very relaxed and calmly say, yeah, I could work with that. Even if the number they give you is terrible, right? You cannot negotiate in an interview. Your intention and manifestation in an interview is to get them to fall in love with you so that they give you a job offer. Then they might ask, if they ask a third time, what are your salary expectations? You will have come prepared with a salary range in mind. I invite you to speak with subject matter and industry professionals, research websites such as the Department of Labor, Occupational Outlook Handbook, so dol.gov/OOH. as this website will show you all the salary information for a variety of different jobs of a variety of different industries. And you can drill down by state and you can drill down by city as well, because we know being a graphic designer in San Francisco Bay Area is very different than being a graphic designer in Wichita, Kansas, right? Then, of course, you have other websites like LinkedIn.com, Salary.com, Glassdoor.com. And you can also do traditional Google search. You just type in graphic designer, for example, salary in quotes, and you look to see what numbers show up. You want to throw out the lowest number you see and throw out the highest number you see, and then verify this salary range with people that you know do this work. And I would also say that keep your own personal needs in mind. So what is the bare minimum you need to survive and live? So think rent, bills, groceries, things like that. And then add $25,000 to the opposite end of that range to give you some good wiggle room. And just so you know, if you want to convert $25,000 into hourly rate, it would be adding another $12.50. So for example, if my research shows me, okay, my salary range is between $50,000 and $75,000 a year annually. If I want to convert that into an hourly rate, it would be $25 to $37.50 an hour. So when the recruiter asks a third time, what are your salary expectations for this role? You're going to say, based on my conversations with industry professionals, looking at the Department of Labor website, looking at other websites such as LinkedIn.com, Salary.com, and Glassdoor.com, my salary expectations are $50,000 to $75,000 a year annually. And then the most important part of this response is the following. You're going to tell the recruiter, and I am more comfortable with the higher end of that. And I am more comfortable with the higher end of that. So you're going to signal to the recruiter, you've done your research, and you know what you're worth. You might get asked these questions in other parts of the interview process, but just know in general, recruiters are looking to figure out, again, one, are you a crazy person? And two, can the company afford you? Does anybody have any questions about how to interact and engage with recruiters in the first round interview? Okay, wonderful. So you pass this first round interview and you're invited to an on-site interview. You're going to do the same thing, right? You're going to figure out who your audience is. You're going to practice your stories. You're going to wake up with enough time to engage in your expansive practice. You're going to show up to the interview 30 minutes ahead of time. And you're going to have a handwritten thank you card with you, just in case, and I'll explain why in a moment. You're going to find a potentially nice green, grassy tree environmental area to sit in, and you're going to do your 18-minute visualization. And of course, I remind you to arrive 30 minutes early because you never know what public transportation is going to look like, what parking is going to look like, if there's any other mishaps that might get in the way. So just arrive early. You're going to do your 18-minute visualization meditation exercise, and then you're going to walk into those offices with about 5 to 7 minutes ahead of time. And know that when you arrive there, the interview has begun. So everyone that you interact and engage with, from the person who checks you in, the person who brings you a bottle of water, the person who tells you where the bathroom is, everybody is part of the interview. So be very mindful to treat them with respect and courtesy, like you would treat everybody in general, right? Now you're in the in-person interview. And there are 4 C's to the job search process. There is competency. Can you do the job? There is culture. Can you do the job here at this company? Chemistry. Do I like you enough to want to sit with next to you 40, 50, 60 hours a week to do this work? And then compensation, right? If you are invited to an on-site interview, you have already demonstrated you have competency. You have not been given a job offer yet, so you can't work or worry about compensation. The two major things you are trying to demonstrate in an in-person or on-site interview is culture fit and chemistry fit. So anytime you get asked this question, or if you are ever told the reason why you didn't get a job, excuse me, is that you were not a culture fit, I invite you not to take it personally and not to be upset, because this is usually a lie, because they don't have a real reason to hire you. And remember, hiring is arbitrary and discriminatory anyway. It's probably something that had nothing to do with you. So how do we prepare for culture fit, or how do we prepare in learning about culture fit, is by doing informational interviews with people who work at these companies and spaces well before the interview, and get a sense of what they're like, and get a sense of what the energy of the spaces are, right? This will teach you. In addition, there are other resources such as company blogs, company YouTube videos that show you a little bit about what the spaces are like. These are a little bit more doctored and prepared. So I invite you to talk to the people individually and pay attention to what kind of people they are. This will help you understand the culture fit of an organization. Then the next element is chemistry. And you are going to demonstrate chemistry because you have done research on the people that you're interviewing with, and you're going to communicate to them in a way that resonates with them. In essence, you are trying to convince the people that you're interviewing with that you are like them, right? Because likes like. Similar people like similar people. So what this might look like is, let's say you're interviewing with me and you type my name into Google and you start seeing that I'm in a band and I practice yoga. You might see some other things, right? And you decide, oh, when I meet with this Arya guy, I'm going to talk about music and how, when I do my work, it's very similar to putting together a song or playing in a band, right? And then when you interview with me and you talk like that, I'm immediately going to say, wow, Lena's like me. I want to work with someone like Lena, right? This is how you demonstrate chemistry, okay? So keep those ideas in mind. Does anybody have any questions about culture or chemistry or competency before we talk about some of the other frequently asked questions in interviews? Okay, awesome. So when we get into the interview, you're going to get asked that question, tell me about yourself. We have already discussed how to answer that question. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other questions that create a little bit of mischief for people, them being the shadow questions of weakness and failure, and then the light questions of strength and accomplishment. And I know that it's 12:27, so we're probably going to go a little bit over, and it is my intention manifestation to have this done by 12:45. So if you have to leave, or if you have to leave promptly at 12:30, I totally understand, and my apologies for going a little bit over. So when we get the questions about weakness or failure, the entire intention of these questions is, can you self-reflect and do better? Can you self-reflect and learn from your experiences in life? So when you get the weakness question, what they want to hear, the template that I invite clients to consider and how to answer this question is, name an area of improvement that you're working on, and then be very specific in how you're working on it, right? So you're going to identify an area of improvement and then be very specific and detailed about how you're working on it. And an example might sound like this. Arya, tell us about a weakness. Yes, of course. One of my areas of improvement is that, being a good Capricorn, I have really high expectations of myself and others. And sometimes these unrealistic expectations create mischief for me and tension for me. So what I'm doing to improve upon this is to first pay attention to when this sensation shows up in my body, right? I pause and I take a breath and I do a body scan. Sometimes it shows up in my chest or in my stomach. Sometimes it shows up a little bit in my shoulders. And once I identify that, I pause again and I take another breath and I send breath to that area to relax. Then I usually get up and walk outside just to get a change of scenery. And I spend about 15 minutes just kind of being outside, relaxing myself and reflecting. And when I reflect, I'm asking myself, okay, Arya, did you do your best in the present moment? Yes, no, maybe. If the answer is yes, then it is okay. You have to let go and you have to embrace this feeling. And when I talk about embracing, I'm meaning treating the feeling as if it's a house guest, right? Um, so I might say things to myself like, frustration, disappointment, embarrassment. Welcome. It's nice to see you again. Please have a seat at this table. Let's have a smoothie. And note that the front door and the back door are open for you to leave anytime. So that's how I practice improving upon it when it's involving myself. If I observe that there's been a miscommunication or a fracture with a coworker, it's the same process. And then I reflect on, okay, what are some questions that I can ask my colleague, 2 to 3 hours later, or maybe the next day, to get some better insight into what was going on with them during this experience. And then I usually go and ask them. I also want to say when I'm reflecting upon things myself, and if I reflect upon the fact that I didn't do my best in the present moment, then I'm usually reflecting on, okay, what can I do better for next time? Then I implement it. So you can see in my response, I name something specific and sincere and authentic. And then I'm very specific about what I'm doing to improve upon it. The failure question works exactly the same. It's just phrased a little differently, and the way you're going to answer it is a little bit differently. Instead of giving a specific example, you're going to tell a story, a context, action, results story, where the results were not super great. And at the end of the story, you're going to say, if I could do it over again, I would, and then say what you would do differently. So you're going to tell a context, action, results story, and then where the results were not super great. And then you're going to say, if I could do it over again, I would, and then tell them what you would do differently. So it may sound something like this. Arya, tell us about a failure. Yes, absolutely. While I was working for Citizen Schools, an after-school program for average middle school youth in Redwood City, I was charged with recruitment for the 2012-2013 academic year. So in March of 2012, or 2013, yes, 2013, I always get the dates messed up. In March of that year, I got my applications, got my projector, I got my backpack, I got introductions to all the elementary schools in the area. I've got a bag of candy because, let's be honest, if you're talking to elementary school kids, a bag of candy makes you their best friend. And I go and I present to all the elementary schools. And when everything is said and done, I have 160 applications filled out for the program the next year. And that's the exact amount that we need to continue receiving full funding from the Department of Education's After School Safety and Education Grant. Come later that year, when the program started, due to after-school sports, parents not thinking the program's a good fit, general attrition, and other extracurriculars, we lost 25 students, which put us under the 160 threshold, which means that we lost some funding. If I could do it over again, I would start recruitment in January, and I would over-enroll by 50 students to give us a buffer. So you can see, I told the context, action, results story, where the results were not super great, and then I talked about what I would do differently if I could do it over again. Does anybody have any questions about the failure or weakness questions? Awesome. So now let's talk about the light questions of strength and accomplishment. If you could ask this question, tell us about a strength. Please come prepared to answer emphatically and with confidence. You have to know what your strengths are. If they ask for one strength, you just give them one strength. Please do not name 5. I've seen people do this in interviews all the time where they start rattling off strengths. And when you talk about your strength, I invite you to use this following format. Name your strengths in a very concise, pithy way and then say nothing. So you're going to say your strength and you're just going to relax and look into the eyes of those who are interviewing you or looking into the camera directly. And you're just going to smile. This is going to make the people interviewing with you feel some kind of way, and then they're going to ask you to tell them more. And that's when you're going to tell them a context, action, results story where the results were really awesome that illuminates for them your strength. So it might sound something like this. Arya, tell us about a strength. Yes, absolutely. In all my career counseling work, it is my intention and manifestation to provide culturally competent services. And I sit there and I smile, don't say anything. And then it kind of confuses them, make them feel some kind of way. So then they're like, oh, interesting. Tell us more about that. And I say, yes, absolutely. When I was working at Bay Area Video Coalition as a senior career counseling manager, I had the honor and privilege of just encountering all different kinds of people, you know, from different ethnicities, gender orientations, affiliations, immigration statuses, abilities, you know, I was able to work with all different kinds of people. And I speak Spanish and I speak Farsi. So if I encountered a Spanish speaker or I encountered a Farsi speaker, I was able to do a little bit of career counseling in Spanish and in Farsi to make them feel at ease. One time, I had a client named Evelyn, who was a product designer from Peru, and she had just moved to the United States, and she didn't have any relationships or contacts here. I informed her or invited her to go out and do informational interviews, so networking with professionals to learn more about this space. And I reached out to a colleague of mine who was a product manager. His name is Vince Bierman. And yes, his name really is Bierman. And I asked Vince, I said, Vince, do you have any product designers on your team that would be willing to connect with my client, Evelyn, so that she can ask some questions about their experiences and their career and what they do? And more importantly, if they speak Spanish, that would be really amazing too, so then they could connect in Spanish. And Vince did some digging and came back and said, yes, that he does have a Spanish-speaking product designer who'd be willing. So I connected them. And really serendipitously, it was really wonderful that they were both from Peru, so they were able to connect that way. Even more serendipitously, after that informational interview, they, 3 months later, hired Evelyn to do some contract work, and that contract work eventually turned into full-time work. So this is the type of story that I invite you to tell to exemplify or demonstrate your strength. Then you get the question about accomplishments. And whatever your accomplishment is, be it professional or personal, you just have to say it with authenticity and sincerity. So whatever it is, just say it. And the way I invite clients to think about answering this question is, imagine you have unzipped yourself from the human suit that we are currently residing in. You're floating in the ether, and all of a sudden you see or sense this beautiful, warm, golden light coming towards you. And this beautiful orb of golden, warm light suddenly projects this voice, and you hear it ask, Jeffin, with your time on Earth in that human suit, what was your most proudest accomplishment? And whatever you're going to say to that golden orb of light is what I invite you to say to the people interviewing you, because that will be authentic and sincere. Does anybody have any questions about the strength or accomplishment questions? Awesome. We've already talked about how to answer the salary expectations question. Then the last question that they'll probably ask you is, that's all the questions we have for you. What questions do you have for us? And then this is the time for you to ask questions. I would also say that as the interview begins, if a question arises, ask, do not wait, and see how they respond. If you begin to ask a question, they say something like, oh, we'll answer all your questions at the end, take note that that's kind of a red flag, because you don't want to work at an employer or with an employer who's not willing to answer your questions when you have questions, right? So take note of that. When you get asked this question, what questions do you have for us? Get some consent and do a time check. So you could say, oh, I see it is 12:39. how many questions do we have time for? Right? And maybe they'll say 1, maybe they'll say 3, maybe they'll say 5. Whatever they say, honor that. So you're just being polite. I'm going to send you in this follow-up email a list of powerful questions to consider asking. The first half of the questions are going to be very objective, bottom line focused, and the last couple of questions are going to be more value questions to understand what this place is about. I want you, in the rest of your interviews from here on out, to always ask the first question should be, how will success be measured in this role? How will success be measured in this role? This question is really powerful and will usually get employers to think about, well, how do we measure success if they do not have a clear definition of success? And if they don't have a clear definition of success, take note of that, because that's kind of a red flag. And if they don't, you will impress them even more with your powerful question. Some of the other questions on this list are going to be, what is the priority of this role within the first 30, 60, 90 days? What behavior traits are necessary to be successful in this role? If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about this job, what would it be and why? And, the waving of the magic wand and changing one thing is like literally asking what sucks about this job and why does it suck? The asking about the behavior trait is you want to hear the hiring manager tell you something that may or may not be on the job description. The 30, 60, 90 days is alluding to the probationary period that we usually are on within the first 90 days of a job, and making sure that whoever gets this role will be able to hit those milestones. Then the last couple of questions are more culture-based questions. And the first one is, tell me about your favorite project or memory working here. And this will be really telling and informative for, instead of asking people, well, what's the culture like at this company? If you get them to tell you a story about what's important to them, that through the lens of this company, you'll be able to tell really quickly what's important and what the culture of that specific person's department is. Another really powerful question is, what does professional development look like here? And that you just want to know, okay, am I going to be mentored? Am I going to be given skills? Am I going to be able to grow into a new role? Or am I going to stay stagnant and be expected to learn for myself? The last question I invite clients to consider asking is, how is diversity celebrated here? And I think this is a really timely and powerful question to be asking employers, because they need to understand that we as individual entities have experiences, and then we are also affiliated with certain groups and demographics that have experiences, and they need to practice honoring both. So these are the types of questions I invite you to consider asking. The very last question you're going to ask is, if I wanted to send a thank you note, what is the best address to do so? And if they give you an email address, then you're going to send an email. And in this email, you're going to say, dear so-and-so, thank you so much for taking the time to interview me for blank position at blank company. I greatly enjoyed talking about blank. I greatly enjoyed learning about blank. Please let me know if you have any other questions. I also forgot to say that if you're doing a video or Zoom call as your first interview, within the first 5, 10, 15 minutes after the Zoom call, you want to send this thank you note via email. If your interviewers say, yes, you can use this address here that we're having this on-site video, this on-site interview, excuse me, then you are going to take that address and you're going to go outside when the interview is done. You're going to find a nice quiet place. You're going to take out that thank you card that I told you about earlier, and you're going to write the thank you card there. Same content. Dear so-and-so, thank you so much for interviewing me for blank position at blank company. I greatly enjoyed learning about blank. I greatly enjoyed talking about blank. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Sincerely, your name. You're going to seal this thank you card. You're going to stamp it. You're going to address it, and you're going to put it in the mail that day, so that it shows up 2 to 3 days later, and they're completely blown away about how polite, positive, and professional you are. And now the last element is the waiting game. So you're going to do 2 follow-ups after your interview. The first follow-up is going to happen 10 business days after after your interview. So that's going to be 10 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, right? And then you're going to email the person you've been emailing with, and you're going to ask them for an update on the status of your application for blank position at blank company. That is the language I invite you to use. Can I please get an update on the status of blank position at blank company of my application? And then if you hear nothing back, you're going to wait another 7 business days, and you're going to try to call somebody at this company. And the person who'll pick up will probably be a gatekeeper of some kind. And then you're going to say, may I please speak with so-and-so? And they'll say, what is this in regards to? And then you can very easily state that I'm following up with so-and-so about an email I sent 2 weeks ago and I haven't heard back. They will then transfer you, and then you will either get a voicemail or you'll get to talk to this person, and you're going to ask the same question. I would love to get an update on the status of my application for blank position at blank company. Please let me know. And then after those 2 follow-ups, you move on. It is your intention and manifestation to demonstrate that you are hungry and you are not thirsty. Does anybody have any questions on the follow-up protocol that I just described? Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions about any of the items I've been talking about today in regards to interviewing? All right, wonderful. Going once, going twice, 3 times a lady. My name is Arya Zarenkok, Employment Training Specialist 3 for Arts, Media, Entertainment, in service to visual media design, broadcast electronic media arts, fashion, photography, cinema students. And on behalf of City College of San Francisco and the Strong Workforce Program, this has been another edition of Workforce Wednesdays, Interviewing Essentials. And I thank you so much for your time and energy here today. And as always, I just like to close with nourish yourself and others, cause no harm to self and others, and ease the suffering of self and others whenever, wherever possible. Think good, speak good, do good, and be good, and you will feel good. I really appreciate y'all. Thank you again.